Candidates Forum presented by the League of Women Voters of Winnebago County and Oshkosh Media. This forum is airing live on Oshkosh Media's Life TV, which is Channel 2 on Spectrum Cable, and streaming live on the free Oshkosh Media Live TV channels on Roku, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV, as well as live streaming on OshkoshMedia.org. The forums will re-air many times before Election Day on Oshkosh Media's Government TV, which is Channel 10 on Spectrum. Please check the Oshkosh Media website for replay times. As usual, the forums will also be available on demand on the Oshkosh Media YouTube channel. I'm Margie Davey, the president of the League and tonight's moderator. The League of Women Voters seeks to inform citizens about major public policy issues and about candidates seeking office. We never support nor oppose any political party or candidate. We welcome everyone. The League publishes a monthly newsletter and has an active Facebook page. For more information about the League of Women Voters, access our website at lwvwinnebago.org. Please be aware of important statewide races in the April election so you have time to learn more and make informed decisions about the candidates. The Wisconsin Supreme Court has 2 candidates running for one open spot, and there are 3 candidates, including the incumbent, for the office of State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Please check our Facebook page for resources to educate yourself on these offices and the candidates vying for them. We also have some informational sheets on the table outside the door of this room. Tonight, 3 candidates are competing for the office of Winnebago County Executive in the February 18th primary election. They are incumbent John Damel and contenders Gordon Hintz and John Motz. 2 of these candidates will advance to the April 1st general election ballot. And just so you gentlemen know, I often use first names during the forums. I won't be doing that tonight, but I'm going to call you all Mr. in spite of your different titles. We'll try to remember that so we can keep everyone straight. Joining me on the panel is Karen Schneider, publisher of the Oshkosh Herald, the Neenah News, and the Winneconne News. Public questions were solicited in advance. Those of you in the audience may also submit questions on the cards provided. Just wave them in the air and a League member will take them. You can see they're coming around with papers now. Questions must be for all candidates and may not single out a candidate. Questions may be edited for brevity and clarity, and while we hope to cover as many as we can, we may not have time for all. Candidates, please keep your answers concise so we may cover as many issues as possible. Our timekeeper will give you cues. Please heed the stop sign so I don't have to cut you off. And I will. Concise answers will allow time for more questions. This is not a debate. This is a forum. You will each be given the same amount of time for each question. Okay, we will now begin our opening statements. You will each have 2 minutes to summarize your background, qualifications, and your motivation for seeking the office of Winnebago County Executive. Why should voters choose you over your opponents? Going alphabetically, we'll begin with Mr. Damel.
All right, thank you. I want to back up of why I ran 4 years ago. I was a restaurant owner and very committed to the community and collaborations with the many nonprofits we had. During the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were struggling. And when I was out helping people with food and other necessities, the one partner that wasn't there I felt was Winnebago County. That was the year they had a $6.5 million surplus, and any year that should have been the year they had a deficit. So I was frustrated and ran to kind of change that. How do we get out there? How do we meet people where they're at? How do we become better partners? And it's been a long road. We have gotten there. So through my time of running a restaurant, it translated to county government really well. When you run a restaurant, you are HR, you are marketing, you are payroll. You're also customer service and labor and the dishwasher and the server and the cook. So it translated to the multiple facets of county government really well, and figuring out organizational structure and how it should work. Also, it helped me, the community side helped me to figure out how to get out and find people where they're at and address some of those most vulnerable in our community. When you start in a project, just like when I walk to a restaurant, you go to where the fire burns the biggest. And that has to be the most vulnerable. and then you work your way up. So with that, at the end of this, I just want to give thanks to League of Women Voters and all you people that are here engaged, and my wife and 5 daughters at home. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Hintz.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the League. Well, I'm Gordon Hintz. I'm born and raised in Winnebago County. I live in Oshkosh with my wife, Liz, and 2 kids. I have more than 20 years working in government at the federal, state, and local level, including 16 years representing Winnebago County in the Wisconsin State Assembly, 4 of which I served as minority leader and 3 of which I served on the State Budget Committee. Before the Assembly, I served as a management assistant and a budget analyst in local government, and I hold a master's degree in public administration from UW-Madison. I believe that my experience has uniquely prepared me to be an administrator at the county level. I believe that government has a positive role to play in creating opportunity in people's lives, and I'm running for Winnebago County Executive to help create a stronger and more prosperous Winnebago County. I'm running specifically to improve communication and accountability. You know, with the county board, there continues to be issues between the board and executive. With other government entities, towns, cities, and villages, we saw miscommunication or poor communication when it came to the distribution of ARPA resources. But most of all, it's really about engagement with the public. If we're going to have a priority-based process, if we're going to try to get the priorities of the county, we need to find ways to engage the public. That not only builds trust, but enhances the legitimacy of government actions. During my time in the legislature, I held regular office hours, town halls, knocked on doors, did office hours, had surveys, and I think that that experience will translate to the county executive office in a way to engage the public. We need to hold our leaders to high standards and to demand hard work and accountability, and I think I'm ready to complete that job. I'm determined to meet those expectations, rebuild confidence with the public and trust with the county board. I've always focused my career on finding ways to positively impact our community. I maintain a keen understanding of the operational and political decision-making at the government at the federal, state, and local level, and how to engage organizations and individuals. And I look forward to doing that as Winnebago County Executive.
Thank you. Mr. Motz.
Well, thank you to the League as well for holding this forum. So I'm John Motz. I have been the sheriff the last 14 years. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 34 years. I spent 30 years in the Wisconsin Army National Guard, retired as a command sergeant major, and spent a deployment in Iraq. So as far as processes are concerned, I have risen through the ranks of both of those organizations. In county government, I was involved even as a lieutenant with the county board and with committees, and then as a captain, and then obviously as a sheriff. So I have an open and trusted relationship with the board and with the committees already. I'm a graduate of the U.S. Army Sergeant Major's Academy, FBI National Academy, and Sheriff's National Academy. I also have a grad certificate from the University of Virginia. I believe that we need to restore open, transparent, and responsive government to county business, and that's not happening now. If you review some of the videos that have occurred with county board meetings, with committee meetings, there have been issues where agendas have been changed or manipulated. There have been issues with studies that have been done. That is not open and transparent. We need to give the facts. I'm a factual-based person, so I will give facts and let the board decide. The power of county government doesn't come from the county executive. It comes from the collective county board. And I don't, as a county executive, hold the board accountable. You, the voter, holds the board accountable. The chairman can censure certain county board members, but you need to be able to lead the department heads. And that is what my expertise is in. I have led my entire adult life, and I will continue to lead as the county executive, and in a direction that is progressive, thinks outside the box. We have done that at the Sheriff's Office on numerous occasions.
Thank you. Before we move on to our public policy questions, that many of which were submitted in advance or will be given to us tonight or already have been, I just want to remind everybody here that we do practice the rules of civility in this room, just like the Plan Commission and the council and everybody else. So just a reminder, no booing, no cheering, no, we're here to learn tonight. It's not a debate, it's a forum, and nobody wins a forum, so we all just learn from them. Thank you. Now we will ask public policy questions submitted in advance and by the public tonight at the forum. You will each have 2 minutes to respond to each question, and Karen will be asking the first question.
All right, we're going to start with a softball, and we're going to start with you, Mr. Hintz. What are the first 5 things you will do as a county executive in 2025?
The first 5 things I'll do as county executive in 2025 is probably meet with the county board members, because that was one of the, big issues that we've seen. After 4 years, it hasn't gotten any better. There continues to be relationship issues. Communication is a big issue for me. It will also means meeting with the other towns, cities, and villages in Winnebago County to make sure that we have established relationships and that we're working together. It'll also mean reaching out to the public so they know that they're fully engaged, not waiting for them to come to meetings, not waiting for them to come and watch us, online, but going into the communities, going into the town halls, trying to find ways to truly engage them on county issues. The reality is most people don't know, what county government does. But then we're already getting into the budget process, and it's time to start making priorities. I think one of them is going to be, how do we fund maintaining funding for the HELP program, the homeless eviction loss prevention program, which has been key at keeping people that are at risk of losing their home. And getting people back into housing. That runs out of federal funding at the end of the year. We're going to have to work hard to see if we can come up with the resources to maintain that funding. And the other one is to come up with funding to make sure that we're maximizing Parkview as the institution that it needs to be. It's not fully filled right now because we don't have the staffing to be able to fill the positions there. And I think that we need to work on that. I know the county's got a study out there. We'll look at the results from that study to find out how it can be feasible. But starting with the communication, getting into the policy and priorities, knowing that we've got some issues that exist out there that the budget's going to have to deal with are things that I could come up with in the seconds you gave me.
Thank you, Mr. Hintz. Mr. Motz, what will be the first 5 things you do as county executive?
Well, the first thing I would do is set expectation for department heads. What are we trying to accomplish, and how do we go about that? And along with that same first day of taking office and setting those expectations is begin the evaluation of our programs. We have programs that have been used by the county for many, many years. We're spending millions of dollars on the programs, and we don't know whether they're working. So we need to evaluate those programs quickly because, as Mr. Hintz said, we're coming up on our budgeting time. And we either need to change the programs that don't work, eliminate them, whatever it might be. So those will be the first 2 things. Thirdly, I already have a relationship with the board members, but certainly meeting with board members, village, city, and municipal leaders to let them know what changes are being made and what they can expect from county government under my leadership. And then reaching out to the nonprofits and working with them to collaborate and to develop plans to deal with the issues that are plaguing our communities. And then create collaborative relationships with all entities, to include nonprofits, counties, cities, municipalities. And, we're going to sit in a room and we're going to actually have long-term solutions to the issues that exist.
Thank you. Mr. Damel.
All right, some of the things you can already see over the next couple of months, we're going to be posting ongoing fund balances for every department so you can see where the spending is going month by month in the county. Get to the facts. Our agendas are going to be posted on Facebook so everybody can see what's coming up in the future. This month, actually, on the Human Services Board, we are going to make the HELP program permanent. We have found a way to make that. It was a 2-year pilot program. The 2 years are done. It has showed the benefits, and we're making it a permanent program. Defining roles. I am going to hold the county board accountable in the way that I can. They are the legislators. They're the ones supposed to be coming and talking to you. A lot of people in this room probably don't even know who their county supervisor is. A lot of people out there don't even know what district they live in. These are things that we have to know. These are the legislators that do make the policy decisions, and you have to engage with them, absolutely. We have to get the strategic plan finalized. It has been hard getting the strategic plan finalized. We had 36 board members, and then we had an additional 13, and we had 20 responses. 20 responses on strategic plan. So we are now going with another company to come in and get out and try to get that feedback back from the community. Again, that is the county board's job to kind of drive that. I can't do that for them. We need to get strategic plans so we can get to priority-based budgeting. It's taken us a long time to get some of these plans in place. A facilities condition assessment, we are finally finishing up our first master plan. We're finally painting the picture of what we are, what do we do, and what it costs. And now it's time to get into why we do it. What are the needs in our community? Where are the needs going up? How do we reallocate and invest to meet those needs? And where are those needs going away? And how can we reallocate some of those resources to what is most dire in our communities?
Thank you. This is going to go to you first, Mr. Motz. Less than a week ago, federal funding to support newly arrived refugees was stopped, leaving many of our new community members cut off from critical resources, including funding for housing, food, and transportation to work. How would you lead Winnebago County to address both the immediate and the long-term needs of refugees?
Well, I believe some of that funding has been now restored. However, again, collaborating with our nonprofits, we're not, I don't believe that we're leveraging all those services. I attended a session with nonprofits in the Winnebago County area, and that room was filled. It was at Oshkosh Corp. There had to have been 100 people in that room. I didn't know all of the organizations that exist. So we need to work with all of them because I don't think we're leveraging their services correctly. And we will also use the resources from Winnebago County to assist where we can. But again, I think that some of that funding has been restored. I know that there's been contact with congressmen regarding some of that funding. So to answer the question, I guess briefly, it's collaborating with the nonprofits and then what resources we have here in Winnebago County that we can assist with, and then looking to restore some of those programs if they have been unfunded.
Thank you. Mr. Damel.
Well, I can tell you why I look tired. I haven't slept much in the last 2 days. We heard about this. Yesterday we had an email out at 5:30 in the morning to all department heads. What is the expectation? There are a lot of nonprofits out of there. That's the issue. They were defunded. We have members in the crowd of SEPO here, and it's not like they have a lot of funding either. So the premise came to us as the county because we are the safety net. So we had reached out to UWO to see if there's a way that we could use one of their empty dorms. That was going to be a long process, was going to happen in time. We looked at Parkview, can we house them there? I'm not about to have refugees be on the street in the middle of winter in Wisconsin. We had some legal issues there. We looked at the Expo Center, can we create an emergency shelter if need be? Again, these are families that came here legally through the long process that should not be put on the street. Lastly, we offer to World Relief, is there a way for us to help fund or bring in people to be a transition team? We will pick up your cases where they left off, where you're at. We will operate that 90-day plan, much like you would. We'll just take over the program and figure it out. Let's figure out how to get these families employed, get them in a job, and get them in an apartment, and help them to be successful in our communities. So it was a really quick turnaround. I'm glad that the order was rescinded, but we had a plan. We were prepared within 24 hours of getting the notice. And, you know, that is the key of knowing your community and what options are out there and the stakeholders that are available. And a little bit of prudence would be nice in some of these policy decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
Well, I think the important thing is that county government is going to play a key role, especially when the rug gets pulled out from under it in such a short period of time. And while we may got a good news maybe about a short-term reprieve, it may very well come back. And I know that there's a lot of insecurity out there, and the county's going to have to continue to work to have those relationships built and figure out how we're going to best take care of our community, because these people are now a part of our community, and that's something that we need to make sure that not just at times when people are at risk of new policies coming out of Washington, D.C., but, ongoing. This area, especially in the Oshkosh community, almost all of the population growth has come from the refugee population. That's how we're growing. That's how we're filling jobs. That's how we're meeting workforce needs. That's at risk by some of these policies that are out there. And so we need to make sure, that the county's doing everything possible to partner with the organizations that are there when we have a less hostile administration in Washington. Much less, one that seems to be off to a pretty threatening start. So, I'm glad to hear some of the things that have been, were put in place. I'm glad to see some of the conversations are being had about what we can do in the immediate term to ensure that, people aren't going to be, left on their own. But, there's a flurry of insecurity, a lot of fear out there. And a lot of people that didn't sign up for this. And again, they're going to look to leadership, they're going to look to the county officials, and the county's going to have to play a big role in that.
Thank you.
All right, so we've been hearing a lot about transparency lately. So we are going to start with you, Mr. Damo. And please share what your definition of transparency is. How specifically would you create more transparency and create a better work environment for county departments and other working relationships with other county municipalities with that definition of transparency?
Sure. Transparency is a word that likes to get thrown out and a story that to be told, but let's look at the facts. County government is easier to follow now than it's ever been before. Our meetings are recorded. Our agendas are accurate. We have agenda item reports. We have draft resolutions. None of those things existed before I got here. It was government kind of winging it as we went. We would write resolutions a week or two before a county board meeting, and that's about how much time you had to look at language that was going to affect your life. So that transparency is very much improved, and I want to continue to grow on that as it is. That's why the fund balances are going to be shown. We need to open the books for the general public, but we had to figure out what the facts were first. So agenda item reports are a very fascinating tool for you, the general public, to be able to follow along. So if you see something in an item that we're going to discuss, you have ample time to review it and reach out to your supervisor or show up to the committee and participate in public comment. One of the biggest challenges in Winnebago County is the division. So we have Fox Crossing, Needham, Menasha, and then we have the Oshkosh section, and then we have Winnebago, Amro, and everything west. So building that brand, building that trust between those three populations, basically a third, has been a challenge. So I do communicate often with administrators and mayors. For our IDB, I thought it was very important that we had somebody from Menasha or Neenah or Fox Crossing on our industrial development board, as well as Oshkosh, as well as going between the administrators of Winnebago or Amro, just to kind of make sure that we have somebody there to represent all three regions, and then they have to have meetings with their partners in their region. We need to build a brand in Winnebago County, so as far as transparency, I think it's just a buzzword. Actions say differently. I think we are turning the lights on in somewhere that there were a lot of shadows before.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
Well, I think transparency in government lends itself to a lot of different areas. I think, regarding meetings, putting information out there is important. Making sure it's accessible is important, but so is the communication side that promotes it. I think locally, again, in Oshkosh, we've seen a lot of new council members be very active at promoting the agendas for council in advance, doing meeting recaps, informing people of the decisions that were made in a way that helps with the public. At a time when local media has struggled, especially in daily news, this has become more important than ever, because you can't have transparent government if people aren't informed of those decisions. So I think the opportunity's there because of some of the tools that exist. But if county government's truly going to engage people in a transparent way, it has to make sure that information is being promoted and that people are being engaged. I will say this, the budget is not very transparent, and I think that it can be used as a planning document and can be done in a transparent way. In past budgets, the county would show what the proposed dollar amount was for a certain program, and then it would show, what was being what was ultimately decided. This budget, they decided not to do that. And so, that was a decision that took something that if the public wanted to see what agencies were actually proposing, was something that was less transparent than the last budget. Inconsistencies between budget also, raise issues of transparency. And there's a lot of information you can put in a budget, but you ultimately want to try to put it into words and numbers that people can understand. Is there a structural deficit? What is my tax levy going to be? How much does that cost me on a median home? Some of those things were hard to, take out of the budget, were not as easy as they could have been done. And I think if you're going to make something that's transparent, there's opportunities missed that we could take advantage of.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
I'll give you an example of transparency. We put out an annual report, and in that annual report, you will see all of our use of force incidents. You will see what the result of those use of force incidents were compared to the number of total incidents that we responded to. It is just a micro amount when it comes to the amount of things we responded to and those that resulted in any type of use of force. You will see internal investigations in there, the number that we had and how they were resolved, whether it was a written warning or it was all the way to a dismissal. So there's nothing that we're hiding. Certainly I can't release information when it comes to a personnel record, so I can't get that detailed, but it is as detailed as it possibly can be. And anytime that there's a study completed, we pay to have a vendor complete a study, that study should be available to the public in its entirety, not anything removed because we don't agree with something, or if you don't agree with something that's in a study, then you have to make your case. You have to say, this is why I don't agree with it. And to Mr. Hintz's point, last year we did program budgeting and there really was no line item budgeting, so which was the 13 budgets prior that I had presented, it had all been line item budgets. And there's something to be said for both ways of doing it. So I propose that we do both. We do a line item and we do a program budgeting. What we're missing with program budgeting is the evaluation of the program. We don't know if they're working. I know which ones are working for the sheriff's office, and I can give you the statistics because we evaluate them constantly.
Thank you.
Okay, I think this one goes to Mr. Hintz, right?
Correct.
Okay. First, it goes to all of you. What specific measures do you support to address the ongoing addiction issues in our county, including overdoses and those in the unhoused population?
Well, clearly, this is one of the biggest county responsibilities out there is, coming up with ways to improve access to mental health and addiction services. We're really fortunate to have some quality staff in both the Public Health Department and the Human Services Department in Winnebago County. I don't pretend to be an expert. I let my managers manage. We need to use best practices that are working in other places and remove the programs that aren't working as effectively in Winnebago County. I've been happy to hear that overdoses have gone down nationally and locally as well. Some of that is because of the promotion and the education campaigns that are going on out there, and as more people are learning about the dangers that exist. But, the increase in the homeless population that we see out there, a lot of that is related to mental health and addiction. And, that's got to be a component to addressing the homelessness and housing issue that we see in Winnebago County as well. So, I mentioned that meeting with the departments, early on in my administration, but it would be, what are we doing now? How effective is that working? What are other places doing? how effective is that? Are there new things that we should be doing? But, as county executive, I'm not going to try to micromanage, the health practices that are best for our county.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
Well, we have a very progressive and one-of-a-kind program in the jail called the STAR program, Sobriety Treatment Addiction Recovery. We have seen phenomenal results with that program. So when somebody comes into our facility and they have an addiction issue, they are interviewed, we place them in the sobriety pod, and they get intensive counseling that occurs on a daily basis. And it is a very intense schedule that they're on. They also receive Vivitrol shots, which stops the impact of alcohol and opioids. Early on, we saw a 46% sobriety rate for those that were released from the jail that stayed in contact with their sobriety coach, which is better than any Southern California treatment facility. We have reduced recidivism from 33% in that population down to less than 7%. So we're seeing a reduction actually in the jail population, and it is impacting the community in a positive way. Those people are actually contributing to the economy here instead of the addiction issues that drove them to where they're at. We also have the HOST program that is just starting, Habitual Offender Sobriety Transformation. That is for, many of them are the homeless population, but we are bringing them in with into basically the STAR program, but on the outside. So these are innovative programs that have been looked at by many other counties in the state, and actually the state of Oregon has asked for our information. There's a 24/7 program. I recently participated in the point in time where we went out and met with the homeless, and we're failing them when we're not taking the resources to them when we're out there meeting with them. One of the gentlemen, I believe, was eligible for disability, but he doesn't know how. And
Thank you, John. Oh, Mr. Motz. I'm not good at this last name thing. I'm sorry. Mr. Damel.
All right, and John, I do want to thank you for coming out for the point in time count. That was impactful for me that you were there. First thing, we have to get rid of the stigma. We have to be able to talk about these things. When I first ran for county executive, I was advised to scrub everything about me being a compulsive gambler. And I wanted to lead into it because other people need to know that recovery is possible. The 12 steps are amazing, and the first thing we have to do is get people to realize their life is unmanageable, and you can get control back. But you are powerless on your own, which is why you need the peer support community. One of the things I think we've been effective at turning the tide here in Winnebago County is because Public Health wrote for a grant to have one of the most robust opioid fatality review boards in the nation. Out of that opioid fatality review board, the recommendation for bringing peer support specialists into the jail was one of those things. We started valuing that, and that's when I realized that we had contracted social workers at our jail. The problem with that is when somebody leaves jail, that service stops. We can't follow with them. So I asked the sheriff if we could bring our human services people into the jail so we can continue to casework with them after they got out. And I'm thankful that he did that. And then we were able to lead into it. It became successful. I'm grateful that we created one pod that was specified for this, and that became the STAR program. And I do think that is very successful. We get people that are a captive audience when they're at their low. We pair them with support staff and peer support specialists that have been through that, have been in the same situation as them, and then we walk with them after they get out of jail, which is why it's important that we partner with Solutions for Sober Living Housing. And understand it doesn't come from a form of judgment. It comes from a form of compassion. That's where you really lean into it. And then when you turn those people from recovery into service, man, you're cooking, right? Those are the people that are going to help us win this. Paired with some of the emotional things like Narcan vending machines, which I had to go toe-to-toe to make sure that we got that reconsidered, and I'm grateful the board reconsidered that. Access to Narcan is making a huge difference.
Thank you, Mr. Damel.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe we're going to start with you, Mr. Motz. What will you do to protect and improve public health outcomes?
Well, I think education is a huge portion of public health outcomes. keeping the public informed of what is happening. I know we have the H1N1, the bird flu that is happening right now, norovirus, which is very contagious, and the public health director talked about it today, along with the other issues that exist. So I think a lot of it is just educating the public, educating the schools. A lot of times that is the source of a lot of the contagious diseases such as norovirus and how it spreads throughout the community. So I believe that education and part of public health is also the addiction piece of it. I agree with John that Narcan is a very important tool. I disagree with some of the other things that are in the kits that are being handed out by public health. It's that balancing act of what is best for those that are involved, but most importantly, what is best for the 173,000 people that live here.
Thank you. Mr. Damel?
All right. There are a lot of things that affect your public health. I mean, H5N1 is something that everybody should be aware of. It is hitting the chicken population very much so. It's also transmitted through our birds. Agriculture will be easier for us to connect with farmers. It's the people that raise their own chickens. You got to know what to look for. So I would definitely, reach out or pay attention to it so you can know the signs. There are so many different issues in our community. Lead paint, lead pipes, more prominent in areas of poverty. If the lead content in your house is higher, so is your chance of prison. That's a weird connection people don't know. That's some of the outcomes that we have to make sure that we're paying attention to and we're trying to be ahead of. The hard thing is separating yourself and your personal beliefs from what's best. We do have a needle exchange program in Winnebago County, and I had a very emotional response for that. My brother is 4 years recovering of being a heroin addict. I'm very proud of him. He's very proud of himself, too. He's an amazing person. I remember cleaning out hundreds of needles out of his place, and when I found out that we were doing that, I was mad. And then I had to understand it. And then I had to go through the program, realize if the county does it, we can actually connect people to recovery and let them know the resources that they want. Vivint, the company that provides the materials, they only care about the spread of communicable disease, HIV, hepatitis, and other things. They don't have that connection of what are the resources to help you. So if we kick them out of the county, it'll just go back to a van or an office and won't have those connections that we need to. But if it's a county program, we can connect them with recovery, we can connect them with treatment. So I had to get away from my own personal belief on that to understand why we do it and a touch point we have. And I'm pleased to announce that very program reported 235 saves with Narcan last year that we probably wouldn't have had. So it's complicated.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
Well, public health is one of the biggest responsibilities of county government. Education, prevention, treatment, and public health in this country has also been classically underfunded, and I think we learned that the hard way when it came to the COVID pandemic. One of the biggest things I think the county executive can do is really stand up and back their public health department. In the post-COVID world, when science and evidence-based policy is being challenged, it's important that the administration is supporting their leaders in the public health agency to, really promote evidence-based practices and science-based practices when you're talking about protecting the population from communicable diseases. There's also been increased tension out there with regard to the powers of public health agencies, and those are things that, are going to continue to be debated out there. But ultimately, public health has an important role to play in protecting, the population. But I'm someone who's going to support evidence-based policy. We are, tight under levy limits, and there are a lot of demands on, county funding, and it's hard to say that we're going to be able to come up with a dramatic amount of funding, but we don't want to get caught off guard given the risks that are out there. And I think, again, we learned that the hard way and we may be facing another challenge with what's before us right now. And so I guess, with the Hintz administration, you're going to get somebody that is going to prioritize public health.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time I start with Mr. Mott? No, Mr. Damel. See, this is why we couldn't go with just John. because-
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, so we're going with Mr. Damel?
Okay.
Okay. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a county sales tax?
Sure. Well, the advantage was it would be a easier way for us to tackle our capital improvement plan. As I said, we had our facility condition assessment. We have roughly $200 million of deferred maintenance coming at us over the next 7 years. I do not want to put that on our debt levy because Lord knows we can't afford our property taxes to go up anymore. Personally, my household went up significantly this year, and I don't know how I'm going to afford that. But we have to be very considerate. Number one, do we need it? You know, and we've had this conversation before. I agree. You don't tax just because you can. People are struggling out there. Sales tax does hit the people in poverty a lot more. You know, a 0.5% is much different from somebody making $30,000 a year than somebody making $300,000 a year. So we better make sure that we're using it for the right reason to bring property taxes down. If we can use it for property tax relief, which is one of the things we have to do, then, you know, I think we can evaluate it, and I wouldn't be necessarily against it. It would be a way for tourism to come in, EAA, some of the fishing tournament to help cover the cost of our airport or our boat launches. So that I would be okay with, but it can't be new money. People are struggling already. When I go through Piggly Wiggly and 2 pounds of butter for $7 is a deal, there's a problem. So I think government needs to know that taxes aren't always the answer, and sometimes the tax relief is what people need. But I am very much interested in evaluating it. I don't think we need it at this time, but it's definitely not off the table.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
Yeah, well, under the state law that allows for the local sales tax option, the money has to be used for property tax relief, or it can go towards programs that would be funded with the levy, so that could account for new spending. Obviously, the pro of it is you're, you know, using it for property tax relief or new money. You're generating revenue from out of county residents. We're one of 2 counties in the state of Wisconsin who doesn't have the local option sales tax. So other counties are getting out of county residents spending the money, and we're not. So that's sort of the pro reason. The con reason, like John said, is it's a regressive tax that hits people that are lower income harder. I agree that if you were to do it, property tax relief would have to be one of the major reasons. But I think before you have to, you know, consider that is, you know, do we need new money? The reality is the county's budgeted more in expenses than it receives in revenue forever, it seems. We had a $6.8 million budget deficit in this last budget that was passed, borrowing money from the fund balance, you know, $3 million from the human services budget, $2.5 million from the Parkview budget, you know, money that may not be there next year. So before we start considering new revenue options, we got to get a grip on how much money we're actually spending and how much revenue we expect to come in, and not just continue to take it from fund balance to try to have a balanced budget every time the county board takes up the budget. And that's something that, you know, would have to come before any consideration of the sales tax. The last thing I'll say is it's actually, you know, it's a decision of the county board. We can look at the pros and cons. We can look at where we are down the road. A lot of counties seem, you know, we're down to 2 counties again that don't have it. But I think, again, until we have our finances done in a transparent way, where we have an idea of how much money we actually have and how much money we expect to come in a consistent manner, you know, I wouldn't do it for the sake of doing it.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
Well, I'm not in favor of it to balance an operational budget. So I think we missed an opportunity with ARPA funds when we could have developed our cities, villages, and townships for new construction. New construction by meaning that we could have put in roads, some infrastructure for sewer, water, all of those things to help develop areas. That creates the opportunity for new construction, which gives us new money without creating a sales tax. And we missed that opportunity, but I think we still have an opportunity to work with municipalities, cities, the villages and townships to work towards that. Obviously, tourism is a big part of Winnebago County's revenue. So the positive is that we would be receiving monies from people who aren't in this area. But again, I'm not in favor of creating a sales tax just to merely balance our operational budget. The people that are hit with the sales tax are the people that are most in need. And that is a lot of people. Inflation has hit people hard, to include myself. So increases to property tax and insurance on your home, you probably all noticed that went up as well, because we're going to have to pay for all of the hurricane and now the fires in California. So we're going to see that continue to rise. And we can't continue to ask our taxpayers to pay more.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Mr. Hintz here, and this is kind of a follow-up. It sounds like you're all in agreement regarding the county tax. So if the board passed a county sales tax, would you veto it? And what would you do to control spending and increase revenues to avoid a county sales tax? And please be specific.
Can you say the last part again?
Please be specific. Yeah. What would you do to control spending and increase revenues to avoid a county sales tax?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to get the board to this position, it's because you've had a realistic discussion about the county's ability to meet the demand for the services that it is mandated to provide by the state and that it needs to provide to service its community. And that's going to come after the fund balances have been exhausted and it has nothing else out there, or that there's such support for providing property tax relief out there and it's done in a way where, you know, the majority of the money is being used. You know, I think 20% or something of the revenue that's generated by the sales tax comes from out-of-county residents, you know, where that was used as new money and 80% of it was applied towards property tax relief. I guess if it was, you know, more than the amount, you know, if they could override my veto, it wouldn't really matter. But I think it would be part of a broader budget discussion where the county was arriving at a place where it was no longer in the financial position that it is in right now. And, you know, it simply could not meet the demand for services without negatively impacting the residents that it is, tasked with serving. So, you know, the sales tax is only the worst thing until you're faced with getting rid of services that keep people's lives together. And so, you know, despite some of the heartburn over passing a new sales tax that you've heard up here, I think the reality is, you know, if we got to a position where we could no longer fund basic county services, or if the board had reached a discussion where meaningful property tax relief, you know, could be done with a commitment to the public, you know, it's something that, you know, be considered. But obviously, all the other tools out there, you know, with program evaluation, with maximizing the programs that we have to live within our means are, you know, all things that I'll be doing, you know, because it's the right thing to do to maximize resources and expand tax base.
Thank you. Mr. Motz.
Well, there are, again, evaluating the programs will be one of my first 5 things that we do, and I think we can see some savings there. If it's not a mandated program, what is the result of that program? Is it meeting the desired effect? And if it is not, do we really need that program? And today, you know, we talked about at the department head meeting, we talked about vacancies within certain departments. Do we need to fill those vacancies, or can we work more efficiently? In the sheriff's office, we have taken positions and divvied up duties and eliminated positions. We eliminated 10 positions 2 years ago. So there are ways for us to actually minimize our spending within each of the departments. We would ask them to do what they can to control their spending. And again, the evaluation of programs would be part of that. And increasing revenue. One of the things that we have looked at in the jail is the STAR program is very popular, but there are counties that just don't have the ability to create their own. We have an empty pod, and we would charge to take inmates in and charge the counties a per inmate daily fee. We can bring in revenue by doing that. There's expense, there's added expense with staff, But when I do the numbers, we actually, we can make some revenue. Same, same thing kind of applies to Parkview. I mean, I'd be honest with you, I don't know what all the beds are and what they need to be in order to continue to have federal funding. But is there something we can do different to fill all of the beds that are vacant? And is there something that we can do to create more revenue in all of the departments?
Thank you. Mr. Damel?
All right, first of all, we have to get back to the data and the facts. As Mr. Hintz pointed out, our budget has been off. From 2019 to 2023, we had 5 consecutive budgets totaling a $65.5 million structural deficit. And at the same time, our audit showed it had a $27 million surplus. It's been off, and it's been way off long before I got there. Now we have a new finance director, and now we have a director of administration who has a GFO background, who understands government finance. She thinks it's kind of crazy how we've been doing it. So in 2011, we switched to Tyler Munis Enterprise to kind of get our finances into a different system, but we did it in a haphazard way, didn't have a plan. We just kind of threw it together. So now we're kind of correcting all that to see exactly what do we need. Where is the money shortfall we do? Would I veto it? No, because I believe in the process. I believe in the Republic. They're the legislators. In 4 years, I have not vetoed a single thing in county government because I believe in the process. I don't believe in executive powers. I think we should work through the legislators to legislate. So if they wanted to bring forward county sales tax, I would honor that. I would encourage them to use it to get us debt-free and to no longer bond and have our debt levy zero and never have to bond again. Again, if we could fully fund our highways and we could fully fund our capital projects for efficiencies in our airport, that is something that I would be okay with, and it'd allow us to drop that tax levy down. Counties that have instilled the sales tax, when I looked at Outagamie, have dropped their mill rate, have crashed their mill rate by over $1, $1 per thousand. Now, $1,000 per thousand means more today because houses are worth $280,000 for a 1,200 square foot, 3-bedroom house. So that makes a big difference.
Thank you.
Okay, this is going to go to you first, Mr. Motz. How will you specifically handle the policy changes resulting from a possible Act 10 repeal?
I'm sorry, what?
A possible Act 10 repeal.
Oh, okay. Well, the deputies still have bargaining rights. So law enforcement and fire were not included in Act 10 back when it was first enacted. So the policy changes would be if they are allowed to have collective bargaining rights, we're going to start at zero. We're going to start at, okay, there's a contract that needs to be negotiated with each of the entities. There were a courthouse association. There were different associations throughout the county government. So it would just be a negotiating process, but we're starting at where we're at. I think the county has done a good job keeping benefits and pay up to date. So I don't think this is going to be a big issue. Really, what it amounts to is more representation during grievance procedures or dismissal procedures, which is what we do now at the sheriff's office because they do have bargaining rights. So really, it is just starting at zero, negotiating a contract. And again, I don't know that it's really necessary to recreate the policies of unionizing because we've done a good job taking care of the employees.
Thank you. Mr. Damel?
Yeah, I think it's important to exist that unions exist for a reason. There were employers out there that weren't operating in good faith. There were some terrible conditions that need to be set forth. That being said, specifically when I look in Winnebago County, the very first labor force that got an adjustment when I was here was the deputies that were under a union contract. We had to give them a $3 an hour raise for our deputies on the road. So that was number one. After that, we did a reslotting. 3 years ago, it would have been a major issue. But now we did a reslotting for wages in Winnebago County. We've revamped our merit pay, and we've instilled PTO. So we've come a long way of putting our employees first, because without them, we can't do good services. So as far as the pay thing, I don't think it'll affect us that much, because we've done a good job of getting it closer to where it should be. We're not exactly where we need to be yet, but we're at least paying fairly. But I think, one of the things with union bargaining rights that I think, Gordon, you've mentioned before, that it's not just about pay. It's about the resources they need and the tools they need and the ability to do their job. My mom was a school teacher for 37 years. My dad was custodian. Custodians, teachers were at odds, and my mom was like, this is crazy. We're partners. Like, we need to help each other out. So sometimes it's above the resources of just, negotiating the pay. It's are you listening to them and what their needs are? So I think Winnebago County is doing a much better job of listening to our employees, finding out what the needs are, having them be part of that process. I don't need to be told to collectively bargain with your employees, to just act in good faith and talk with them. So I don't think it's as big as a risk for Winnebago County as it would have been 3 years ago. We've come a long way of treating our employees right.
Thank you. Mr. Hint?
Yeah, we had collective bargaining and we had levy limits in place from 2003 till 2011, and we survived. In fact, we did a better job of retaining our employees. We didn't have the exodus of people that felt underappreciated and that left government service after 2011. So I think it actually is an opportunity at a time when we're competing with other professions out there as a way to recruit and retain people who want to feel valued, who want to say in their workplace, not just on pay and benefits, but as both my colleagues here have mentioned, want to be able to bargain over workplace issues that they may have, an issue or a grievance with. It isn't just about, pay and benefits, but, but the reality is, it looks like levy limits probably will be in place at the state level for some time. And if Act 10 gets repealed, that would still be in place to, as a counter to pay and benefits, as something to consider when going through the budget process and the collective bargaining process. But, to me, I'd view it as an opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we start with Mr. Damel. All right. Currently, there is no emergency shelter in Winnebago County for families. What would you do to ensure emergency shelter and affordable housings for families?
Kicking in my social filter hard right now. We have to ensure that we are the safety net. There was a model in place. I was hoping to do that, and they have a right not to do that. We have been working diligently with the Salvation Army, so when weather does hit, they're trying to get permission. They can be that emergency place. During the last cold snap, we actually partnered with Salvation Army to make sure that we're doing a voucher program with them. But we have to be very careful on that, because you can't advertise it. What happens when you advertise it, people that don't necessarily need a hotel room, they hear about it, they show up, they get that voucher, and then the people that need it, that have no other option, don't have that left. So you kind of try to figure out behind the scenes, you work with your local law enforcement, people that are on the grounds, to figure out who those people are, target them, and get them. Again, mental health is tricky. There are people out there suffering of mental health that do not want to get in the car. I think it's very dangerous when government decides that we're just going to Chapter 51 somebody and take them against their will and put them into something because, we think that they're a danger to themselves. So it's a very fine line that can be abused, so you have to be careful with that. But, we have those conversations and we figure it out. At the end of the day, it is the county's job to ensure the safety and stability of our people. And sometimes that can be uncomfortable, but it's a job we have to rise up to do. So when people are on the streets in a snowstorm, you have to have those negotiations. And we have. I mean, some of those barriers are getting easier, and some of those people it's becoming easier to address. We are now embedding our second social worker in OPD to go out there and kind of connect the two worlds and bring the services to them. It's a challenge.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer other than I agree that the county is ultimately, plays a leading role, if not the leading role, in making sure that we're taking care of our most vulnerable citizens, and have an obligation to make sure, especially during weeks like last week, I think many of us were concerned about where these people were going, knowing that we didn't have an emergency shelter in place. And I know, because I was over it day by day, that they weren't even at capacity, and there's other days that they certainly are. We need to work with our housing partners in the nonprofit sector. We need to work with other local governments. We need to knock on the doors of places and ask that uncomfortable question about the realistic use of a facility in times of need and overcome some of those legal hurdles that I may not even understand or know at this point. But at a minimum, we need to be that safety net, and I think it's hard right now, especially when you're in the middle of winter. So I don't necessarily have an answer, but I know it's an outstanding issue for us to try to address. We have different levels of homeless population that exists out there that are getting care and shelter in a variety of places, but we know that there are people still on the streets that are in need, that need a program-free facility to be able to enter. And, that's something that, if as county executive, I'd continue to work on, but I don't have an answer.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
Well, I think it's a little bit tragic that the only time we talk about this or worry about this is when winter is here. We forget about the cold weather that exists in Wisconsin every single winter, but yet we're always scrambling to find places for people when we hit those real cold snaps. We do have an emergency shelter at Sunnyview Expo Center that could be opened in an emergency. So there is a place, but I think before we even get there, I talked about the point in time where we went and met with some of the individuals who are homeless. We need to take the resources to them. Without getting too specific, one of the individuals I talked to, I believe, is eligible for disability, but has no idea how to apply. Why aren't we bringing someone from Human Services to them? We'll fill it out. The internet's open 24 hours a day. So we fill that out and we help them be self-sufficient. The one individual said he could only work 4 hours a day because he has some physical limitations. Do we have a list of employers that are looking for work? We should be taking that with us and say, okay, this is who you need to contact, and link them up with those employers. And landlords, are we reaching out to landlords and talking to them about, I know this person has an eviction on their record, however, they have a place to rent, and rents are very expensive. But if we're able to work with landlords to get people places to stay, that helps with the entire homeless population. But again, we need to do it not just in the time of need, but we need to be prepared before that.
Thank you.
Comes around quick.
I was just waiting to see who was going to look up first so I know who to call on. So thank you for that help. Mr. Hintz, what do you think about the increased spending for county administration over the past 4 years? Has it improved decision-making and outcomes?
Well, I think the short answer is no, because I think there's still work to be done. When you look at the budget that I described earlier and talking about transparency and accountability, when you look at the communication and the engagement with the community, I don't think that it has resulted, in the benefit versus the multiplier of what the increased spending has ultimately been. the budget still had a baked-in $6.8 million deficit in it, which is what the deficits, we had built into the budget before the current executive was in office. There are a variety of promises, ultimately that were made, but every time an issue came up with the board or every time something wasn't getting done, we heard we needed additional staff. We heard we needed additional resources. As recently as July of 2023, we had county board meetings, the executive would say, I need more staff. I can't do this. And, somehow the previous executive with pretty thin staff was able to run the county, with the same kind of deficits and the same kind of fund balance, even if those budgets were largely the same, without some of the issues that exist. So I don't think the public has seen the value of the increased investment that we've seen in the county executive's office. I don't expect to increase the budget in the executive's office when I'm the county executive. But I think if you're going to make that kind of increased investment, you need to demonstrate the value. And I don't think the, demands for those resources and the need for those resources was made in advance. And I'm not sure we've seen the benefit yet on the other side.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
When Mr. Damo first took office, I actually spoke in favor of a position because of the scope of authority and responsibility that the county exec has. I get it. There's a lot of departments, and he's in charge of the non-electeds, and that's a direction that you have to give to every one of those department heads. However, it went far beyond one position, and no, I don't believe we have seen the benefit of those positions and seen what the need for all of those positions. And along with evaluating the programs, I consider this an evaluation as well. If given the opportunity, I would begin to evaluate those positions and the need for those positions because, again, I was in favor of a position. However, it went far beyond that, which is extremely expensive, and those positions are fairly high salaried positions.
Thank you. Mr. Damo?
Yeah, I would disagree. County executive was not running the county was running the county. Department heads were running their own departments in silos. There was no cohesion, there was no team, there was none of that. And because of the fact that, my office has been able to do some of the things we've done. We now have a facility condition assessment. We are now creating a strategic plan. We are now centralizing finance and coming up with policies and procedures. We've been able to reslot 1,300 employees, figure out PTO for the county. We are looking at fiscal forecasting now, all things that couldn't have been done, agenda item reports, making sure that we're doing fiscal notes and legal notes and evaluating some of the programs, setting it up for discussion. None of those things were happening. Department heads look to their committee chair as their boss. That's not the system that we have. So for them to get to policy and budget is the focus where they're getting to. And for me is that operational accountability. And you need more of an office for that. The program, my office, is $439,000 roughly for the year to operate 18 direct reports. 18 direct reports. So I think we're doing phenomenal with the staff we have. I think we're still a little short in finance so that we can make sure that we have checks and balances. There are a lot of things we have to correct in the county. We have to figure out that deficit to surplus issue. We have purchasing cards where people can just purchase things without checks and balances right now that we have to figure out. So in order for us to do that job, to make sure checks and balances are in place, so we're spending your tax dollars on policy decisions that are approved by the board. For us to be able to hold that under control, we need staff to do it. So I would very much disagree that you haven't gotten the return for your investment for getting our staff to finally be professional government. Thank you.
Okay. I'm up. And I am starting with Mr. Motz. We are seeing an increase year over year in suicides and an ongoing mental health crisis in the county and throughout the country. We touched on this a little bit on the overdose situation, but what specifically what specifically would you do to support and address the issues of the increased suicides?
Well, mental health is an ever-increasing issue throughout our nation. We have added to our jail contract, part of our medical contract, 40 hours of additional time just for mental health counseling. That also increased human services coming into the jail to meet with inmates that are in crisis, which is a number of them. And I think the addiction and mental health issues often go together. If you can't put together a day without using meth, I think that's going to impact your mental health. So they're kind of a multi-pronged approach. So we need to be more proactive. As I talked about with Point in Time, when we went out there and met with individuals, we need to have human services out there as well, meeting with them on a regular basis, creating a trusting relationship. Oftentimes, we don't have that. We don't have that trusted relationship. They are very suspicious. In our 911 center, I was part of a policymaking committee for the state of Wisconsin. We added a computer-aided dispatch program that walks us through a mental health call that comes in, and we're forwarding calls to 988 because someone just needs somebody to talk to. That's it. And we're not sending a police officer there because sometimes we make it worse. Just by showing up with a uniform, it just creates more angst. And so we have done that. We're the first department in the state to do that. So we have to think outside the box a little bit on how we can get services to people and what services are appropriate. And if 988 isn't enough, the call comes back to us, and we'll send a police officer if needed, and then human services becomes involved.
Thank you. Mr. Damel.
Yeah, some of the things that we've done same-day counseling. You can walk into 220 Washington now, and it might take an hour, but we will sit down and evaluate and assess you that day. And that's some of the things we have to get to. It needs to be quick. If somebody needs help, they shouldn't have to wait 4 or 5 weeks before they can get that help. Some of the other things that we've done is our State Street Center. We have opened up a State Street Center as a drop-in center to work with mental health and substance use for some of the most vulnerable in our community. That's fantastic. Go over there, watch them play Uno or journal. And these are some complicated individuals. The same Narcan vending machines also have gun locks and lock bags in them for people that are contemplating suicide, and it is an issue. We have gun locks available at our Veteran Service Office as well that are just there for people to grab. We now have a crisis response team embedded with our medical examiner. So if we show up, we can sit there and counsel families, especially if it's an overdose or a suicide. Suicides in families it can be a trend. If you have a brother or a sister that has committed suicide, your chance of suicide is also high. So we need to get with those people immediately and be proactive as much as we can. We've added roughly 40 staff to our Human Service Department over the last 2 years because we know with social isolation and other challenges, mental health is on the rise. We have to be proactive on that, especially for seniors and children where social isolation hit them the hardest. We have to be proactive on that. And also for our employees, we've done a few mental health first aid trainings that were very valuable so that you have to understand how to ask somebody. And people don't want to be up front, but you really need to be up front. If you're concerned with a friend, are you suicidal? Direct with that word, and most people are uncomfortable with that, but you have to have those conversations with people. So it's a challenge, and we're trying to do our best on that one.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz.
Yeah, I think the county's got to follow best practices, make sure that they're doing everything possible to follow the trends, to direct the resources where they're needed most, to provide the counseling services to the populations that are most vulnerable. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but wanting, knowing, 988 alone has made such a difference in the promotion of letting people know that there's a resource and a place that they can go if they're feeling vulnerable. If we can have the same kind of thing at in-person locations, I think that's great. And I again would defer to, the Human Services on counseling and what other services that we can provide directly, but it's a real issue out there, and we need to look at what's working, what's not, and how we can maximize the resources to invest in preventing, such loss.
Thank you.
And this question goes to Mr. Damel. How would you create a budget that doesn't rely on the shrinking undesignated fund for structural ongoing programs?
Yeah, again, it comes back to finding the truth and making sure that we're looking at those actuals. And you can see it for a long time. We have a history of overestimating expenses and underestimating revenues. So we have to be honest with that. But we also have to make sure that you're getting the revenue where you should be. For a long time, our IT department was buying laptops and everything for every department out there. Well, some departments, we get federal or state reimbursements. So when we were buying a laptop or a printer for child support, right, that's a federally mandated program, we were covering 100% of that cost with tax levy. So when we bill it to child support, the feds actually cover 66% of that laptop and the help desk time. So it's really how you're allocating your money. It's one of the things that Mark Harris always told me is that efficiencies is where you find your money, right? So let's make sure that we're maximizing some of those revenues, that we're coding things correctly, that we're not putting tax levy into things that we could be getting reimbursement back. But again, it all starts with the truth. Like I said, in 2011, we hastily went to Tyler Munis software. Now it's called Tyler Enterprise. Now we have a director of administration who not only specializes in Tyler Munis, but she taught nationally for government financial offices of America. So she is an expert in how we're supposed to be doing things, and we have a long way to go. We have a plan of how to get there, but we have a long way to go. So it's really, if you're not starting with the truth, if you're looking at the budget, a budget's a planning document. You have to look at your actuals. You have to look at your audits. You have to look at what the truth is. And then once you get to the truth, then you can start painting that picture and getting there. I think we're in great financial shape. We just don't know exactly where the line is, and we're well on the way of figuring that out.
Thank you. Mr. Hintz?
I think there's an opportunity. We talked about transparency earlier, and I think there's a great opportunity here on transparency when you go back to the budget as both a planning document and an evaluation document, because these deficits haven't just been occurring, recently. They've been going on for some time, and I think that could be a part of a budget where we look at historically where has the money been coming from in the actuals that produces the surplus at the end of the one-year period, that allows us to have fund balance to pay for services in the following year. And the fact that, that hasn't been done yet, to me is a mistake. Another thing to consider is, maybe we look at doing a 2-year budget, something that I think counties have recently been given the power to do that would allow there to be some more planning. I'd want to look at the pros and cons of that, but it's something that more municipalities have been considering and doing, so they're not spending so much of their time preparing for the budget each year, but they prepare for it every 2 years, and then they can work on some of the actuals and other things that allow them to have a more accurate budget forecast and a more accurate budget planning. Again, I go back to looking historically at where our revenue has come from, why our actuals are as high as they are, and, and where we're off. But, we've been doing this long enough where we should be able to have those answers.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
Again, I go back to evaluating the programs. I think that there is a savings there when we look at programs that are not meeting the desired effect. We will be able to save money. I am confident that we can save money. One of the other things we can do is look at benefits. When you look at a 21-year-old employee who has a very good health care plan provided by the county, that may not be what they really want. They may be a week's vacation and a more catastrophic type healthcare plan would be more appropriate. And that healthcare plan is much cheaper for the county. So we save money, the employee gets what they want, because time off is extremely important to our new employees. So we got to start thinking outside the box about how we take care of benefits for our employees. Certainly, it won't be something that is thrust on them. Another thing is having incentives for people to take their spouse's insurance. So if we pay the deductible for the spouse's insurance and another entity actually pays the premium, there's a significant savings to the county. I believe a family plan is somewhere around $2,000 to $2,200 a month. So if we pay the deductible of $3,000 as an example, we just came out really far ahead when it comes to the end cost. And those things are things that we need to consider and we need to implement. I know that it has, that we've been approached, but there's nothing been done. So it's more about results. I'm a results-driven person, so we will move on things very quickly.
Thank you. I believe we have time for one more question, Karen, if we only give them 1 minute apiece for it.
Aren't you relieved? 1 minute. Mr. Damel, can I ask just clarification? You've referred to a system twice as 2011.
Yep.
It is 2011, you mean?
We went from PeopleSoft to Tyler in 2011.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And I am starting with you, Mr. Hintz, I believe, correct?
Yes.
All right, 1 minute. If elected, would you support a county budget line item for unrestricted funds for community organizations to apply for grants to do what is needed in their community?
Probably not. I mean, the county has such demand for the services that it has. I think the ARPA situation created a discretionary ability to do some things that were nice and you had the ability to do. But the reality is, with the levy limits that we have, with the state mandated services that are in there, there's a lot of demands on what we would like county government to be able to do. But the reality is county has core functions that it actually needs to do, and it's having a hard time in many of the areas doing all of the things that it would like to be able to do. I look for partnerships between the county, nonprofits, economic groups, other groups to, find ways to leverage resources, to maximize taxpayer dollars in ways to meet, projects. I think there should be more consideration at ways the county could look to support economic development opportunities to grow the tax base. But the idea of just giving blank checks to community programs, I think, is a tough sell.
Thank you. Mr. Motz?
And I agree. I don't believe that our taxpayers would be very pleased if we gave the unrestricted funds to whatever entity it is. That's not what government's role is. We have to be very careful. We have to be fiscally responsible when we are programming and what we're offering. There are other ways for those entities to raise money, even though I'm sure that they provide a needed service. That is not county government's role.
Thank you. Mr. Damel?
No, I mean, society has to take responsibility for society issues. And the problem is when government takes too much of your taxes, it makes it harder for you to donate to the causes that you love and appreciate. We have to have more money in people's pockets so they can contribute to the causes that matter. We used to have a heck of a lot more civic groups out there. There used to be a lot more engagement with church, faith-based organizations. People are just tight. And when you can give money to people to your specific needs, it helps out so much better than with the government strings attached to it. One of the things when we created Heroes of Oshkosh, we wanted to make sure money was never a part of it. Just to be able to give people a washing machine or a dryer for free, no matter what your income is, because needs aren't restrictive to how much you make. You could be making a decent amount of money and still be in need or in trouble. Hard times come. So no, we have to get more engagement with community so we start taking care of each other again, building a neighborhood again, sitting on the porch, looking at each other, waving hi, caring for each other.
Thank you. Okay, we've now come to the part where we're going to give you each 1 minute for any additional statement that you may wish to make. If you don't have anything to say, that's okay too. And we'll go alphabetically again in reverse, I think. Mr. Motz.
Sure. Well, I think my record, my experience speaks for itself. I have been the county sheriff for 14 years. I have been fiscally responsible. We have done some very good things. We have been responsive. We have been open. We have been transparent. I already have a relationship with the board, with committees. Certainly, we don't always agree, and we're not always going to agree, but I do have that relationship already. So I am going to be able to start day one with expectations to the department heads and evaluation of the programs. That will start immediately, and we will then obviously be right in the middle of the budget, which I have prepared 14 budgets.
Thank you. Mr. Damel.
Transparency, fiscal truth, all things I've been working on. I'm sitting next to 40-plus years of government. I was the rookie. I think I did a pretty good job in the 4 years. I don't think a lot of people gave me the chance or thought that I would do what I've done. I've drove Winnebago County a long way because I put people first. It's about doing the right thing and the right thing always, and that has to start with truth. I've done 4 years of really pulling us closer to truth, getting us to agenda item reports, getting us to fiscal responsibility, getting us to what the numbers actually say, and getting our departments out there through satellite office hours with Veteran Services and social workers embedded with OPD or the Straight Street Center. We are getting out of our offices and finding out who our partners are, our help programs doing amazing things. So if I could do this as a rookie in 4 years, imagine the next 4 years, what I can accomplish. I have digested and learned government quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hintz.
Well, thank you, and thanks for this opportunity. As I started with, I've got more than 20 years working at the federal, state, and local level. And my time in the state assembly included working on issues that impact counties. A lot of the relationship with the county government comes from state government. They're state-mandated services, and I think that experience at the state level makes me uniquely qualified to be a successful administrator here in Winnebago County. My values have always been about opportunity, fairness, equality, and accountability. I mentioned that I'm someone who believes in communication and transparency, and I think those are strengths of mine that I bring to the office that I always held in my other public roles that I've had. My ability to engage the public, to engage the board, to work with other communities, to work with nonprofits, I think will make me a successful county administrator, whether you live in an urban area, a suburban area, or a rural part of Winnebago County, and I hope to have your support on February 18th.
Thank you. This concludes the forum for Winnebago County Executive. On Tuesday, February 18th, you may vote for one of these candidates. The two with the higher vote totals will be competing in the April 1st general election, and we'll see you back here on March 13th, I hope. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Everyone must show a photo ID with your picture on it. You may register when you go to vote on Election Day. Take a proof of residence with you. Early in-person absentee voting allows voters who cannot reach their polling place on Election Day to vote beforehand. Check with your city or town clerk for early voting availability. Go to myvote.wi.gov to find information on registration, ballot, acceptable photo IDs, and polling places. Go to vote411.org to learn more about these candidates. I hope you've all filled out your Vote 411 surveys by now. You can also find all the candidates for upcoming elections at Vote 411. You may also consider voting early or absentee. Contact your clerk for more information. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Winnebago County, I want to thank everyone for participating in this forum. Really appreciate you coming. Thank you, Karen, for participating again, too. We so appreciate you. Just remember, our democracy depends on citizen involvement, and voting has consequences. Please vote on February 18th.